عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Okay, welcome everyone to Tafsir Surah Al-Ra'd, Serene Thunder. We are back for our fourth class, and we are actually up to verse number 11. And this time we're asking everyone to please have their own mushaf with them where they're following along the translation, inshallah. We hope everyone is doing well, enjoying the course, and we make dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate their suffering, grant sakina and tuma'nina to their hearts, bless them, surround them with tranquility, remove their fear and their suffering, which has intensified with the raid on Al-Shifa Hospital as we speak. Less than 24 hours ago, as you know, the raid began there, and they are surrounded and besieged in the hospital. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve them and liberate them from their oppressors. Ameen. Okay, so verse number 11. We had actually started this verse, and we're going to complete it today. We'll do the word to word again just for review purposes. Lahu, for him. Mu'aqibat. So literally this means those that come one after the other, and it refers here to the angels. Mim, from bayna yadayhi, yani before him, wa, and min, from khalfihi, behind him. Okay, so this is referring to how each person has angels in front of them and behind them. And what do? يحفظونه, they protect him, and they protect the individual, min, from amrillah, the command of Allah, or by the command of Allah. Inna Allah, indeed Allah, la, does not, yughayyiru, change, ma, that which, biqawm, with a people, hatta, until, yughayyiru, they change, ma, that which, bi anfusihim, which is within themselves. So ma, that which, bi anfusihim, by or within themselves. Wa, and idha, if arada, intended Allah, and if Allah intended, or if Allah intends, but it's in the past tense, biqawm, with regards to a people, su'an, evil, fala, so not, maradda, averting, or yani no one to avert it, or no way to avert, lahu, for it, yani no way to avert it, no way to avert that evil which Allah has intended for a people. Once He intends it, there is no way to avert it. Wama, and not, lahum, for them, min, from, dunihi, other than Him, yani other than Allah, min, from, wal, a helper. Okay, so let's do the running translation for verse 11. There are guardians over everyone, both before him and behind him, who guard him by Allah's command. Verily, Allah does not change a people's condition unless they change their inner selves. And when Allah decides to make a people suffer punishment, no one can avert it, nor can any be of help to such a people against Allah. So here we have lots of ultimate truths being conveyed to us. Some facts about the universe, some facts or truth about the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how He operates subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's actually a fascinating verse. It talks about the angels who come in succession, one after the other, and part of their job is to protect the person to whom they are assigned. And we had, I believe, mentioned this from Tafsir, that Allah not only directly watches over whatever each person does and is fully aware of everything he does, but He has also appointed such guardians as accompany him everywhere and keep a full record of all of his or her deeds. This has been stated here to warn those people who live their lives under the delusion that they have been left absolutely free to do whatever they like and shall not be required to render an account of what they did in this worldly life. The warning is that such people invite their own retribution. So there's no such thing as no accountability. There shall be we are being constantly watched by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His angels, and that only further proves the reckoning and a day that we will be recompensed for our deeds. Ibn Kathir mentions, for each person there are angels in succession before and behind him. So again, this is very fascinating if you think about it, how subhanallah, we know about the angels that record our deeds, the ones that are on the right and the ones that are on the left, but we don't think about those angels that are also one in front of us and another behind us, that are there for our protection, subhanallah. So that's an amazing fact that endears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us even more. They are here to guard us by Allah's command. Allah states, this from Ibn Kathir, Allah states that there are angels who take turns guarding each servant, some by night and some by day. These angels protect each person from harm and accidents. SubhanAllah, it's amazing. There are also angels who take turns recording the good and evil deeds. Some angels do this by day and some by night. There are two angels, one to the right and one to the left of each person recording the deeds. The angel to the right records the good deeds, while the angel to the left records the evil deeds. There are also two angels that guard and protect each person, one from the back and one from the front. Therefore, there are four angels that surround each person by day, and they're replaced by four others at night. Two of them are the scribes that write the good and the bad deeds, and the other are the two guards, one in the front, one in the back. So at all times, we have four angels. And this hadith is actually in Bukhari, and the author Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الملائكة يتعاقبون ملائكة بالليل وملائكة بالنهار ويجتمعون في صلاة الفجر والعصر ثم يعرج إليه الذين باتوا فيكم فيسألهم وهو أعلم فيقول كيف تركتم عبادي فيقولون تركناهم يصلون وآتيناهم يصلون. It's a beautiful narration in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ said, angels keep on descending from and ascending to the heaven in turn, some at night and some by daytime, and all of them assembled together at the time of the Fajr and Asr prayers. Then those who have stayed with you overnight ascend unto Allah, who asks them, and He knows the answer better than they, how have you left my slaves? They reply, we have left them praying as we found them praying. And the narration continues, if any of you says Ameen during the prayer, at the end of the recitation of Fatiha, and the angels in the heavens say the same, and the two sayings coincide, all his past sins will be forgiven. SubhanAllah. And there's another narration from the Sahih of Imam Muslim, where قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما منكم من أحد إلا وقد أكل به قرينه من الجن وقرينه من الملائكة قالوا وإياك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال وإياي ولكن الله أعانني فأسلم فلا يأمرني إلا بخير. Okay, so that's a narration from the Sahih Imam Muslim, where Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu reports that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there is none of you but does not have a partner from among the jinn, implying an evil companion, and his partner or companion, someone who's always with you, from among the angels put in charge of him. So, the Sahaba were surprised because, of course, you would expect every single, if the Prophet ﷺ obviously would have, an angel who commands to good, but then how would he have a jinn who was his partner, yani, always with him, and, they command to evil? So they asked him, does this apply to you also, yani, Ya Rasulullah, because obviously, he nothing but goodness emanated from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he replied, it applies to me too, but Allah has helped me against him, and he has accepted Islam, and this otherwise evil jinn had accepted Islam, so he commands me to do only what is good. So again, this is something from the ghaib that we don't realize is at play, that there is, this partner, this, companion that is with us, one from the angels, obviously that would encourage to good, and another from the jinn, which obviously encourages, from the evil ones that encourages to evil. So here the Rasul is telling us that he has, Allah has helped him overcome that evil companion. And so he only commands him to good now, which means that there is mujahadatun nafs that is required. There is a requirement to strive against the nafs in order for us to overcome the evil insinuations and temptations that we have from time to time. And the more frequently we're able to overpower those temptations, the stronger we become as believers. Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, now at this part of the verse, really, really critical, especially to our circumstances that we face in the ummah today. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That indeed Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. And all of us have an understanding of this, but one thing we don't think about is the opposite implication, which the verse also contains, which is that Allah also doesn't change the good condition of a people as long as they don't change their state of goodness in themselves, implying that if you are in a state of blessing, in a state of abundance, in a state of na'im from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not change that either until you change your goodness and start becoming negligent and ungrateful. So that is also one interpretation you will find, one translation you will find among the various works. And at the same time, there is that other understanding, which is the one that comes more readily to our minds when we read this verse. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ بِقَوْمٍ من النعمة والإحسان ورغد العيش حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم بأن ينتقلوا من الإيمان إلى الكفر ومن طاعة إلى المعصية أو من شكر نعم الله إلى البطر فبها إلى البطر بها فيسلبهم الله عند ذلك إياها. So that's actually Sheikh Sadi's comments according to the first understanding that the verse also contains about how Allah does not take away a blessing, take away His ihsan, take away abundance or prosperity until people go from a state of iman to a state of kufr, until people themselves decide to go from a state of obedience to that of disobedience, or a state of gratitude for Allah's blessings to becoming arrogant about them, feeling entitled to them, and that actually becomes a cause of removal of blessings. Okay, so this is the meaning contained within this verse, and also corroborated by other, and through Quranic understanding from other verses. And it also works the other way. This Sheikh Sadi comments on as well that also when a people are in a state of lowness of iman or paucity of good deeds and distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a complacency or satisfaction with dunya and no sense of urgency for the akhirah. So this type of weakened spiritual state also is not going to be uplifted until and unless there is an effort at the individual level for everyone to change their state. Okay, so you have to put in the effort. And Sheikh Sadi also corroborates this. وَكَذَلِكَ إِذَا غَيَّرَ الْعِبَادِ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ مِنَ الْمَعْصِيَةِ فَانْتَقَلُوا إِلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ غَيَّرَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مَا كَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الشِّقَاءِ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَالسُّرُورِ وَالْغِبْطَةِ وَالرَّحْمَةِ. Okay, which means that likewise, if the people change themselves from a state of committing sins to now obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will also change their state of misfortune to khair, to goodness, and to happiness, and to, they will enter into a state of His mercy. وَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ سُوءٍ, and this is what the verse continues to say, that when Allah wills evil for a people, يعني عذابا وشدة وأمرا يكرهونه, when Allah wills for them some type of punishment or some type of extreme difficulty, something that they would hate to see happen to them, فإن إرادته لا بد أن تنفذ فيهم. So then there is no way that His will shall not come to pass. There's no way His will will not be implemented. If He wills something, it shall happen. There is no getting around that. فإنه لا مرد له ولا أحد يمنعه منه, right? There's no one that has the power to avert that which Allah wills. وما لهم من دونه من وال, and there are no helpers other than Him, that would avert any harm that is willed. يتولى أمورهم فيجلب لهم محبوب. There is no one who would be able to intervene and bring that to them which they would love to have instead of that punishment that Allah had decreed over them. There's no one who can do that. There's no one that can replace what Allah wills. ويدفع عنهم المكروه. There's no one who would be able to deter or protect them from that thing which Allah has willed. فليحذر من الإقامة على ما يكره الله خشية أن يحل به من العقاب لا مرد عن القوم المجرمين. It's actually very eloquent tafsir from Sheikh Saadi, that therefore people should be very cautious and very careful that they would become involved in those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates. And if there's nothing else that would stop you from sinning against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this thought in and of itself should be enough, that if you involve yourself in Allah's disobedience and that which He hates, and He punishes you with that which you hate, that punishment you would hate to be in, that state that you would hate to be in, and there will be no one to avert that state from you other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just that thought should be enough to deter you from involving yourself, polluting yourself with those sins, those actions, those conditions that would be hateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And today, subhanAllah, the ummah is bleeding. Gaza is bleeding. The beating heart of the ummah that Palestine has always been is today the bleeding heart of the ummah. And it is suffering in indescribable ways. The horror right now in the Al-Shifa compound cannot be described in words, with thousands of people stuck inside, patients, displaced residents, civilians, along with hospital staff. And we find ourselves, with these facts, find ourselves so helpless with the most incompetent Muslim leaders as excuses, shameful, humiliating excuses that we have for leaders. And, we think, why is the condition of the ummah not improving? Why are we in the billions but have no weight whatsoever? Our leaders have almost no weight whatsoever. So we are all going through these emotions of sadness, of fury, of humiliation, of frustration, helplessness, as we watch the slaughter of our brothers and sisters, women and children, helpless and elderly, before our very eyes. We are hoping for a miracle. We are, inshallah, making dua. We do want things to change, but this Quranic verse is speaking to us directly. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That the state of the ummah will not change, cannot change, until we change that with that which is within our own selves. There has to be an individual change. We have to ask ourselves, how much have we changed through this crisis? Have we changed at all through this most recent calamity that the ummah is facing through Palestine? Have we gotten closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is there a change in our dua? Do we feel pain for our brothers and sisters in a way that perhaps we did not feel before this crisis, although they have been bleeding for decades? But the way that we're able to actually witness the genocide right now through our phones, directly through our screens, is something, we have never had access to genocide in real time before, the way we're able to painfully access it now. Have we tried to do something for Palestine? Do we feel an obligation to our brothers and sisters? Have we participated in anything? Have we used our voice? Do we feel a greater sense of responsibility? Are we trying to, start up some type of a community project? So until there is change at the community, at the individual level. There cannot be a change at the ummah level. That's what this verse is telling us. So if we want to do anything for Palestine, if we are truly asking ourselves, how can I help? What more can I do? How can I alleviate the suffering of my brothers and sisters? Well, the answer is right here in this verse. Try to be a better believer, try to be a better Muslim, try to be more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, try to find yourself spending more time perhaps with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than you did before. Make an effort to connect more with His book, even if it's just a few more minutes than what you were normally doing, something that is sustainable, because this changing of the condition doesn't happen overnight. It takes a sustained effort, a focused effort. We have to have a long-term plan. But we have to believe, in light of this verse, that micro efforts at the individual level will, inshallah, by Allah's permission, by His grace and His blessings, will turn into a cumulative macro effort for the benefit of the ummah at the scale that we want to see. And that the nasr of Allah, that the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ultimately close, inshallah. But we have to be believers. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ, as we know from Surah Al-Imran, that do not fear and do not become weak, and you shall have the upper hand, and you shall emerge victorious if in kuntum mu'min, if you are believers. So that is the shart, that is the condition, that is the taghyir of the nafs, the change of the nafs, to learn what the Quran says about who the believers are. What are their qualities? What am I lacking? How can I adopt those, right? So this, we cannot belittle the efforts you and I make in private, at the individual level. Efforts, actions, intentions that only Allah is privy to. But we cannot underestimate the impact of those efforts, because it is Allah who, inshallah, if He accepts them and blesses them, then He is the one who can send victory to the ummah, perhaps through His acceptance of those efforts, because He will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. So that's how change happens. It has to be from the bottom up. And this is what our responsibility is today. This is, if you want to do something for Gaza, if you want to do something for Palestine, it's right here in the Quran what we need to do. We need to become better Muslims, better people, more connected to Allah, and then inshallah His nasr will come. And this is why part of the resistance, subhanAllah, part of fighting this settler colonialism, part of fighting this imperialism, this brutal Israeli occupation, that we can directly partake in, is resisting our sins. That is how we will change ourselves. How can we participate in the resistance against this illegal occupation? We start by changing ourselves, by resisting those sins that we have become accustomed to, that we are comfortable with, that we are tempted by, that we are involved in currently. This is, subhanAllah, where the micro level effort and change has to occur first. And it is so sad that, as one Sheikh said, that Gaza has to bleed in order for us to wake up. And unfortunately, it took their blood, subhanAllah, in order for the Ummah to wake up and realize. But what if we still have not woken up? That is the more terrifying question. Life is a test, and Gaza right now is a very hard test. They have a very difficult test, all of Palestine, right? But they know they're in the test, and subhanAllah, when you look at their iman and you look at their words of tawakkul and beseeching Allah alone, it seems like they're passing their test. The real question is, are we passing our test through this challenge that is Palestine today? Do we even realize we are in a test? Because we don't have a chance. We don't stand a chance of passing a test if you don't know you are in one. Have we woken up to that reality, had woken up to what this crisis is asking of you and I at the individual level. And inshallah, if we have awoken, then we need to feel responsible for becoming stronger, for becoming better, for becoming more involved. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to feel responsible and sensitive, and not to belittle any effort. And we'll mention some of the things we can do. Number one, first and foremost, of which is dua. Okay, like some shuyukh have mentioned, our primary contribution at this stage is going to be spiritual. It's going to be through beseeching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking for his aid, asking for his assistance, making dua for our hearts to stay connected to the people of Palestine, because it is a matter of iman for us to hurt when the ummah is hurting, and for us to stay connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this time more than before, as the struggle plays out, and to stay connected to the struggle itself, because we don't have a chance of winning a struggle that you are not connected to. So to believe in the cause, to stand up for the cause, to do something, anything, whatever you can for the cause. And a part of the spiritual contribution that we can make to the cause that we just mentioned is resisting sin. Because again, the greatest victory will come by Allah's command in changing the condition of the entire ummah when we change at the individual level. So that requires spiritual strengthening through resisting sins. So this requires introspection, requires the ability to be brutally honest with yourself about yourself. So number one was dua, related to the spiritual. Number two, social media, right? To use your voice, and we have mentioned this before, creating awareness by using your voice, using your presence through social media, using whatever means you have at your disposal. If you don't know what to say, then repost someone else is saying who knows what they're talking about. Every one of us has a circle of influence. We have students, we have community members or neighbors or family, whoever it is that we can access to educate ourselves and spread correct information, and to educate ourselves about the history of this unjust occupation. Because until and unless we're educated about how Israel was created and what the root causes of this occupation are, we will not be able to appreciate the extent of injustice this case represents. And we will not be able to effectively call for change and call for an end to occupation if we don't know the facts. So educating ourselves is, critical at this point. Also trying to stay in tune with the current situation, because, if your family was going through something, a medical crisis, a health crisis, any type of crisis, you would stay in touch with them. You would want to know, as frequently as you could on what the latest update was. So staying in tune with the situation as it unfolds painfully on the ground is part of staying in touch with our family, which is the Muslim Ummah, which is, we are like one body. So also, if we can start some type of awareness project, whatever you can spearhead in your circle of influence. For example, we're thinking about starting a book club for young people with a concentration of on the historical plight of Palestinians, whatever, which is happening all over again, in what they're describing as the worst war ever yet. Okay, so this is not the first time that they're facing war. So subhanAllah, this is something that we can do. Whoever you can reach, any type of project you can spearhead. It can be a book club that focuses on the Palestinians and their historical plight of their land and peoples, or whatever else you can begin. A Quran circle, a spiritual strengthening circle, a sisterhood circle, with the focus of uplifting the ummah, whatever you can do. Like subhanAllah, I just heard about, I believe it was Megan Rice, who wanted to know what the book was that these people in Palestine whose videos she was watching who continued to praise Allah over their dead children. She wanted to know what book it is that they read. And when she found the Quran, subhanAllah, she began a Quran book club on TikTok, I believe. And subhanAllah, became Muslim shortly thereafter. So she did something, right? Doing nothing is not an option. Whatever you can do, do something. Don't do nothing. There has to be something with which we can meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the verse concludes, verse number 11 concludes with when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills some evil for a people, there is nothing that can avert that. For those against whom the decree of Allah has passed, there is none to avert or to provide refuge from that decree. Mawdubi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions this is to warn them further that they should not remain under any delusion that some holy person or saint or angel has the power to rescue them from divine retribution. For there is none who could defend them against Allah, even though they might have been, paying homage, making offerings to their patrons and protectors in the hope that they would rescue them from punishment on the Day of Judgment. This in reference to how the Quraysh would make offerings to their gods, or how some people feel that if they are on the good side of holy people or saints, or going to their graves and giving offerings, that this somehow will protect them from the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is obviously baseless, superstitious belief that has no grounding in revelation. So many truths we glean from verse number 11. Okay, let's look at verse 12. Is the sound okay? Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, so verse 12, huwa, he, alladhi, the one, yurikum, who shows you all, al-barqa, the lightning, khawfa, fear, wa tama'a, and hope, wa yunshi'u, and whips up or spreads, as-sahab, the clouds, al-thiqal, heavy. Verse number 12, he it is who causes you to see, he it is who causes you to see lightning that inspires you with both fear and hope, and he it is who whips up heavy clouds. Okay, so verse number 12, we'll repeat that for the recording. He it is who causes you to see lightning that inspires you with both fear and hope, and he it is who whips up heavy clouds. Okay, so here's a question. Going in protests march, is this count as standing up for justice? Okay, so one of the sisters asks about protests and if participating in protests is part of standing up for justice. So yes, definitely. Alhamdulillah, this is something that we can do. It is to show solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Palestine. It is to express our sense of outrage and our demand for justice and for an immediate ceasefire. Whether or not results come from that, the results are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our job is to put in the effort to do whatever we can, to do what is at our disposal. And if you look at the civil rights movement in this country, that's a great case that illustrates how effective protests eventually were. And they become, as someone was saying, more effective when they are part of a larger strategy. So they can't be in isolation. They have to be part of a larger strategy, right? So boycotts and protests, reaching out to people in power. All of these things are part of a larger collective strategy, and that's when they become powerful. When we're all doing it together, we are doing it in large numbers, and we're doing it in a sustained, strategic way. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Can you give some things to say in dua to our brothers and sisters in Palestine? Yeah, so the best dua is the dua that you make from your heart. You can make it in whatever language you like, as long as you're attentive in the dua, because the dua with inattentive heart is not accepted. So you can make various duas. There are some Quranic duas you can make for them as well. They're highly applicable to their situation. For example, رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْهِمْ صَبْرًا وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَهُمْ وَانْصُرْهُمْ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. This is based on a Quranic dua, right? It's in Surah Al-Baqarah at the end. It comes in a slightly different form, but it's asking for Allah to pour patience upon them. رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْهِمْ صَبْرًا. So أفرغ is like the pouring down of patience, but like pouring it down in abundance, pouring it down in large, abundant measure, right? Which is what they need. رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَهُم, and make their feet firm. وَانْصُرْهُمْ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ, and grant them victory over the disbelieving people. Also, the dua that all of us know, and we can change it a little bit to apply to them. Like we said, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا. Atina means give me, right? Or our Lord, give us, right? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا, actually give us. في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. So instead of saying رَبَّنَا آتِنَا, our Lord give us, when we make dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine, we could say رَبَّنَا آتِهِم. So just changing atina to atihim. Him means them. We're making dua for them, for Allah to give them the goodness of this world and the goodness of the next world. And there's actually a program on a line as from Yaqeen Institute. They have 5 duas, 2 of which I shared with you for Palestine. And they had a video on this, and they also put it in a published article form that you can find from Yaqeen, where they, provided the duas that you can actually make for them. And that's just, an example. It's just a sampling. It can really be any duas that you can make in your own words, in your own language, from your heart, and that's the most important thing. This is just asking, can we make the dua? Yes, we can. رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْهِمْ صَبْرًا وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَهُمْ وَانْصُرْهُمْ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah, pour patience upon them and make their feet firm and grant them victory over the disbelieving people. Ameen. Okay, so inshallah, let's resume with verse number 12. We did the word to word. Let's do the flowing translation one more time. He it is who causes you to see lightning that inspires you with both fear and hope, and he it is who whips up heavy clouds. Okay, so some of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He it is who brings up the clouds that are heavy, yani he originates the clouds that are heavy and close to the ground because they are laden, they're filled with rain, Ibn Kathir says. And so we see, subhanAllah, of Allah's signs is the lightning. So remember, the surah started out with so many different signs of the universe that we can read, like we read the verses of the Quran, the ayat in the book of Allah, and then there are ayat in the skies, in the heavens, in the universe, right? And of Allah's signs, so subhanAllah, this is something that only Allah can do simultaneously with his signs, right? He is simultaneously inspiring fear from his power, and we're seeking protection out of that fear, which is a way that we come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you look at, like Sister mentioned, the power of the lightning, how many volts electricity that it has, subhanAllah, and how it can kill people and damage property, and also inspire hope while as it signals, the oncoming rain and clouds, which mean crops in abundance. Ibn Kathir mentions a saying of Qatada, rahimahullah ta'ala, where he does the tafsir of this part, how lightning inspires both fear and hope. He says, fear for travelers, for they feel afraid of its harm and hardship, and hope for the residents, awaiting its blessings and benefit and anticipating Allah's provisions, right? And when you feel afraid and when you feel hopeful, in both situations, what do human beings tend to do when we're feeling afraid and when we're feeling hopeful and anticipating something? What is it that we tend to do? We tend to raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? When we fear him, we ask him to protect us. When we hope in him, we seek his rizq and his provisions and prosperity, right? And we ask for his forgiveness. So actually making istighfar is one of the asbab of rizq. SubhanAllah, I thought the connection was so beautiful here, that when you're afraid, when you feel Allah's power through the lightning and you feel fear, it makes you raise your hands and say astaghfirullah, right? And ask forgiveness for your sins. And SubhanAllah, that act of istighfar is directly tied to increase in rizq, SubhanAllah. And the lightning, because of the cloud and rains, also increase or bring rizq, subhanallah. And we see this in Surah Nuh. فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا ويمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا. When Nuh alayhi salam was encouraging his people to do istighfar, indeed Allah is most forgiving, he will send the sky upon you, yani with the rain, and that will, give you prosperity and it will give you abundance. That was the implication, right? And, he will extend for you your amwal, your wealth, and give you children and grant you gardens and, make rivers flow, grant you flowing rivers. So it's beautiful how this state of fear brings about istighfar, which brings about rizq, which is also tied to the lightning and the rain and corroborated from by Surah Nuh and these verses, subhanAllah. Okay, so if you look at verse 13, وَيُسَبِّحُ, and praises or glorifies الرَّعْدُ, the thunder, okay? So the thunder, and this is the title of this surah, Surah Al-Ra'd. So literally it's the chapter of thunder. The thunder celebrates or proclaims or glorifies bihamdihi, with his praise, yani with the praise of Allah, wal malaikatu, and the angels do the same, from khifatihi, from his awe, وَيُرْسِلُ, and he sends الصَّوَائِقْ, the thunderbolts, فَيُصِيبُ, so they afflict, biha, with it, yani with the thunderbolts, man, whomsoever, yasha, he wills, wa, and whom they, yujadiluna, are arguing, fillah, about Allah. Fi literally means in, but here it means about Allah. Wa, and huwa, he is shadid, intense, al-mihal, in his contriving. Okay. Verse number 13, the thunder celebrates his praise and holiness, and the angels too celebrate his praise for awe of him. He hurls thunderbolts, striking with them whom he wills, while they're engaged in disputation concerning Allah. He is mighty in his contriving. Okay. In his contriving, in his planning. So here, verse 13, this is actually a beautiful translation. It's a very good translation. Okay, so we'll read it one more time. The thunder celebrates his praise and holiness, and the angels too celebrate his praise for awe, or out of awe of him. He hurls thunderbolts, striking with them whom he wills, while they're engaged in disputation concerning Allah. They're arguing about Allah. He is mighty in his contriving, in his planning. So subhanAllah, this first part, how the thunder celebrates praise and holiness, Imam Ahmad recorded that Salim bin Abdullah narrated from his father that Rasulullah used to say when he would hear the thunder and thunderbolts, he would say, Allahumma la taqtulna bi ghadabik, ولا تهلكنا بعذابك وعافنا قبل ذلك. This is recorded by At-Tirmidhi and Imam Bukhari in his Adab al-Mufrad, and it means, "O Allah, do not kill us with your anger, nor destroy us with your torment, and save us, grant us afiyah before that. Afina qabla dhalik, and give us afiyah, give us, save us, give us protection before that." Lovely dua to memorize, and perhaps we can say that next time we hear the thunder, if we remember. Allahumma la taqtulna bi ghadabik wa la likna bi'adhabik wa'afina qabla dhalik. When Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu used to hear thunder, he would stop talking and start making dua, which means all praise is to He whom Ar-Ra'd glorifies and praises, and so do the angels because of his awe, right? يُسَبِّحُ رَعْدُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ مِنْ خِيفَتِهِ, right? And he would then say, this is a stern warning to the people of the earth. So you see how people who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they are reminded of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not heedless. They don't just keep talking. They actually pause for a moment, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and say words that are befitting to that situation, that reinforce our consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that remind us of his right to be feared, and how we must be and remind to ourselves that we should be in awe of him, right? Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned that Imam Ahmad recorded from Abu Huraira radiallahu anh, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, قال ربكم عز وجل لو أن عبيدي أطاعوني لأسقيتهم المطر بالليل وأطلعت عليهم الشمس بالنهار وَلَمَا أَسْمَعْتُهُمْ صَوْتَ الرَّعْدِ. It's a beautiful narration, maybe a bit difficult to understand when you first hear the translation. Your Lord, the Exalted, the Most High, said, had my servants obeyed me, I would have given them rain by night and the sun by day, and would not have made them hear the sound of the ra'd, of the thunder, subhanAllah. Yani, had the servants been obedient, had they been good, had they been dutiful to me, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would have given them rain by night. Why not by day? Why would the rain come by night? Because sometimes when the rain comes by day, it is a source of annoyance, it is a source of difficulty, it is a source of flooding and inconvenience, right? Sometimes it gets in the way of our plans in different ways. And if it comes by night, it would have given us what we need, to grow our crops and to, sustain the earth and to nourish the animals, so on and so forth, without it being a source of even, minimal annoyance or inconvenience to us through flooding or any other way that it disrupts our routines. And I would not have made them hear the sound of the ra'd. If my servants had obeyed me, I would not even have let them hear the sound of the ra'd, the sound of the thunder, because it is something that inspires some fear. It is something that causes, some level of fear and terror or discomfort to creep within our hearts. So, subhanAllah, if we had been obedient servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would have taken care to protect us even from minor inconveniences and minor moments of fear, subhanAllah. So this actually also proves how sins, result in hardships for ourselves. And this we know, of course, from the Quran, as well as enforced by this Hadith al-Qudsi, right? Now, everything praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything in the universe glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even the thunder. And of course, the angels, right? And we know this from chapter 17, verse 44, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ, right? And there is nothing but glorifies His praise. There is nothing except that it is engaged in the tasbih, in the hamd, in the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All natural phenomena glorify and praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even the thunder. Of course, we don't understand their glorification, but Allah is telling us that everything is involved in His glorification. Maudud rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions how the thunder is a proclamation of Tawheed for those who have ears to hear the real meaning of its loud noise, which follows the flash of lightning, though it is merely a kind of noise for those who hear it like animals. For it proclaims that Allah, who raises clouds from the oceans and carries them wherever He wills, and makes the lightning flash from the clouds and then turns them into rain so as to supply water to the dwellers of the earth, is perfect and worthy of all praise, is all wise and all powerful, and is flawless in every respect, and has no partner whatsoever. So if you look at, subhanAllah, the perfection, the systematic beauty with which Allah operates in the universe, the perfection and the provision that He provides through the various natural phenomena and the water cycle and the rain system, and subhanAllah, it can only be from the one and only God, who is the only creator, who has no partner, who alone has the right to be worshipped. And people who are conscious and have hearts that are alive can actually extract all of this from something like the sound of thunder, right? And of course, the angels themselves, and the angels also are engaged in glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Angels, such a magnificent creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are constantly engaged in His glorification, right? And Tafhim says how the mention of the fact that the angels are filled with awe of their Lord and they proclaim His praise has a special significance here. This is to refute the shirk of the ignorant people who have always worshipped the angels as gods and deities and believed them to be partners with God. It has been stated they are not partners, but His most obedient servants who are constantly praising Him, who are constantly filled with awe of Him. So this directly refutes the incorrect belief of the mushrikeen who used to call the angels daughters of God, right? They have no partnership. Rather, they are full, devout, obedient servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who are engaged in His glorification, in His tasbih, are filled with awe. And one of my favorite narrations about the angels, which is, I think we'll conclude with this, is the hadith from At-Tirmidhi, who classified it as a Hasan hadith, where قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إني أرى ما لا ترون. And he goes to talk about, subhanAllah, Rasulullah says that indeed I see what you do not see, and I hear what you do not hear. Heaven has squeaked, and it has right to do so, by Him in whose hand my soul is. There is not a space of 4 fingers in which there is not an angel who is prostrating his forehead before Allah, the Exalted. SubhanAllah, it is so overwhelmingly beautiful to think about how there is not a space of 4 fingers, SubhanAllah, not even a few inches without an angel that is in sujood before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you imagine? I mean, we cannot imagine the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But these angels have recognized His greatness and therefore are in a constant state of worship. And those angels which are there are some angels, as you know, that are in a constant state of ruku'. There are some angels that are in a constant state of sujood. And we hear this reference right here in this verse, right? SubhanAllah. Sajidan lillahi ta'ala, in a state of prostration before Allah. But even these angels will proclaim on the day of judgment to Allah that they have not worshipped Allah as it was His right to be worshipped. SubhanAllah. Just compare that to our state. And yes, we are different from the angels, and we cannot remain in a state of constant worship of ruku and sujood before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He has obligated us with other things along with His rights, or the rights of His slaves and the rights that our bodies have upon us, and so on and so forth. We've been created differently. But what we can try to engage in and come close to the angels in is a state of dhikr, right? Is in a state of remembrance, trying to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as we can. And if we cannot do even that, then at least to stay away from sin, then at least to try to join the angels in some of their sifat, right? Most of the time, if not all the time, right? Because obviously we do fall into sins, is to try to remain away from sins as far as possible. And dhikr is your greatest help in that. And then to remain in a state of constant shukr as best as we can, especially now with the plight of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. The strength that they are showing, in spite of the extreme deprivation they are going through, has left no excuse for us to utter any type of complaints anymore. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate their suffering and allow us to become grateful servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of his blessings, and relieve them of what they find themselves in, and make us a source of solace and comfort and liberation for them. Allahumma ameen. With that, we're going to conclude right here and continue with the tafsir of verse 13, because we're actually not done with the tafsir of verse 13. We still have a little bit more to go there. So inshallah, with this we conclude. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.